The crack of the auctioneer's gavel sent a ripple through the dusty afternoon air of Silver Creek, Montana Territory, 1876, but it was the sharp blue eyes of the cowboy leaning against the livery wall that stole Beatrice Weston's breath away. She hadn't noticed him before, tall, broad-shouldered, with a quiet confidence that seemed out of place among the boisterous crowd gathered for the property auction. The ranch she'd built with her late husband was slipping through her fingers like sand, and the vultures were circling. $500 for the Weston property, the auctioneer called, his voice carrying across the town square. Do I hear 600? Beatrice clutched her reticule tighter, blinking back tears. 6 months of struggling to keep the ranch afloat after Thomas's death had brought her to this moment, watching strangers bid on the land she'd poured her heart into for 5 years. At 26, she was about to lose everything. 600, called a voice from the crowd. It was Harold Jenkins, the banker who'd foreclosed on her when she couldn't make the mortgage payments. 700, countered another voice, Emmett Thornton, the cattle baron who'd been trying to absorb her property into his growing empire for years. Beatrice felt lightheaded. The bidding continued, rising higher than she'd expected, but it didn't matter. None of it would come to her. It would all go to the bank. $1,000, the auctioneer announced. Do I hear 1,100? Silence fell. Thornton and Jenkins exchanged glances. Jenkins shook his head slightly. 1,000 going once, the auctioneer called, raising his gavel. 1,000 going twice. His voice rose for dramatic effect as he scanned the crowd. Last call, first chance, came a deep, steady voice from the back. The blue-eyed cowboy pushed away from the wall, stepping forward. And I'll take it. The crowd turned, murmuring. Beatrice stared at the stranger who'd just bid on her ranch. He tipped his hat at her, and something inexplicable passed between them. Name? The auctioneer demanded. Daniel Everett, the cowboy replied, striding forward. And I believe I just bought myself a ranch. The auctioneer brought down his gavel with a final crack. Sold. To Mr. Daniel Everett for $1,000. Beatrice couldn't move as the crowd dispersed. Daniel Everett approached Jenkins to settle the payment, then turned to her, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Weston, he said, removing his hat. Might I have a word? She nodded stiffly, following him away from the curious onlookers. Her heart pounded with uncertainty and a strange fluttering she hadn't felt in years. I've been watching your ranch for some time, he said once they were alone. It's good land. It was, she corrected, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. Now it's yours, Mr. Everett. About that. He shifted, suddenly looking less sure of himself. I was hoping to make you a proposition. Beatrice stiffened. She'd heard propositions from men since becoming a widow, none of them decent. Seeing her reaction, Daniel quickly continued. A business proposition, madam. I've got the money, but I don't know the first thing about running that place. You do. What exactly are you suggesting? Beatrice asked, wary but intrigued. A partnership. The deed in my name, but we share the work and the profits. Equal partners. He looked directly into her eyes. I won't lie to you, Mrs. Weston. I've been drifting for years. I want to put down roots, and your ranch called to me the moment I rode past it. Why would you do this? You don't know me. Daniel's eyes softened. I know enough. I've been asking around town. People speak highly of you. They say you work harder than most men, that you deserve better than what life's handed you. Beatrice felt her defenses wavering. And what do you get out of this arrangement, Mr. Everett? A chance, he said simply. Something I haven't had in a long time. Against her better judgment, against everything the past 6 months had taught her about trusting others, Beatrice felt hope stirring. I'll need time to consider your offer. Of course. He nodded, replacing his hat. I'll be staying at the boarding house. Take all the time you need. As she watched him walk away, Beatrice wondered if she was being offered salvation or setting herself up for another heartbreak. The next morning, Beatrice rode out to what had been her ranch. The 2-room cabin Thomas had built for them, the barn they'd raised together, the corral where they'd broken wild horses, all of it belonged to a stranger now. She dismounted near the creek that cut across the northern edge of the property, where wildflowers grew in abundance. Thomas was buried beneath the old oak tree nearby. She knelt beside his grave, brushing leaves from the simple wooden marker. I don't know what to do, she whispered. This Daniel Everett. I can't decide if he's an answer to prayers or another problem. You'd know, Tommy. You always could read people better than me. The wind rustled through the oak's branches, sending dappled sunlight dancing across the grave. No answer came, of course, but Beatrice felt a measure of peace. Thomas would have wanted her to fight for their dream, by any means necessary. Mrs. Weston? Beatrice spun around to find Daniel Everett standing a respectful distance away, hat in hand. His horse grazed nearby. I'm sorry to intrude, he said. I was checking the fencing on the north pasture and saw your horse. Beatrice rose, brushing dirt from her skirt. My husband, she explained, gesturing to the grave. Thomas died last winter. Pneumonia. Daniel nodded solemnly. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. She studied him in the clear light of day. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with lines around his eyes that spoke of outdoor living. Have you ever owned land before, Mr. Everett? Call me Daniel, he said. And no, madam, I haven't. Been working cattle drives since I was 17. Saved every penny I could. Why this ranch? There are others, bigger ones, with better water rights. Daniel looked around, taking in the rolling hills, the stand of aspens shimmering in the breeze, the creek cutting a silver path across the land. Because the moment I saw it, I felt like I'd come home. His eyes returned to hers. That probably sounds foolish. It didn't. It was exactly how she'd felt when Thomas had brought her here as a young bride. I need to know something, Mr. Ev Daniel, Beatrice said firmly. If we do this, if we become partners, my word carries equal weight. I won't be treated as some helpless female who needs directing. Daniel's mouth curved into a smile. Mrs. Weston, from what I've heard, you're about the least helpless person in this territory. I'd be a fool to treat you as anything less than my equal. Beatrice extended her hand. Then we have a deal. He took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. Partners, he agreed. The first weeks tested them both. Daniel moved into the barn, refusing Beatrice's reluctant offer to share the cabin. It wouldn't be proper, he'd insisted. I won't have folks talking about you that way. They fell into a rhythm, rising before dawn to tend to the animals. Beatrice taught Daniel about the property which pastures flooded in spring, where the best grazing could be found, how to predict storms by watching the distant mountains. Daniel proved a quick study and a tireless worker. He repaired the roof that had been leaking since winter, mended fences Beatrice hadn't been able to fix alone, and broke a spirited mare that had defied her attempts at training. One evening, as they sat on the porch sharing a simple dinner, Daniel asked, "How did you end up out here? Most women I know wouldn't choose this life." Beatrice smiled, remembering. I wasn't most women. I grew up on a farm in Missouri. My father taught me everything he'd have taught a son. Her expression dimmed. After the war, there wasn't much left. I met Thomas when he came through with a cattle drive. He talked about Montana like it was heaven on earth. Was it? For you, I mean. She looked out at the land, now bathed in sunset gold. It was hard. Winters that seemed endless, neighbors miles away, constant work. But yes, it was heaven too. She turned to him. What about you? Where are you from? Daniel's face closed slightly. Texas, originally. Left when I was 16. Been moving ever since. Running from something. He met her eyes. Isn't everyone? Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. 3 riders were coming up the path, and Beatrice tensed when she recognized Emmett Thornton in the lead. Stay here, Daniel said, rising. No, Beatrice countered, standing beside him. My ranch too, remember? Daniel nodded, and they walked together to meet the visitors. Evening, Thornton, Daniel called as the men approached. Bit late for a social call. Emmett Thornton was in his 40s, prosperous and powerful, with cold eyes that had never impressed Beatrice. Not here to socialize, Everett. Just delivering a message. He dismounted, his 2 ranch hands remaining on their horses. I'm listening, Daniel said evenly. Water rights, Thornton said. This drought's got everyone hurting. The creek that runs through your property feeds my southern pastures. I'm buying water rights from everyone upstream. We need that water, Beatrice interjected. Our cattle, I'll pay fair market value. Thornton continued as if she hadn't spoken. $500. Daniel glanced at Beatrice, a silent communication passing between them. She gave an imperceptible shake of her head. Not interested, Daniel told Thornton. The water stays with the land. Thornton's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Think about it, $500 could get you through winter without selling off half your herd. We appreciate the offer, Daniel said firmly. But our answer is no. After Thornton and his men rode away, Beatrice turned to Daniel. He won't take that well. Thornton's used to getting his way. Then he's due for disappointment, Daniel replied. We'll manage without his money. That night, Beatrice couldn't sleep. She paced the cabin, thinking about Thornton's visit and what it meant. The drought was worsening. Everyone knew it. If it continued, their small herd might not survive the winter. A noise outside startled her. She grabbed Thomas's old rifle and moved to the window. In the moonlight, she could make out Daniel walking the property line, rifle in hand. He was standing guard. Something warm unfurled in her chest at the sight. It had been so long since anyone had looked out for her. The drought persisted through July and into August. The creek dwindled to a trickle, and Beatrice and Daniel worked from dawn until dusk, moving their cattle to whatever grazing remained, hauling water from the deeper pools. One blistering afternoon, as they dug out a spring that had nearly dried up, Daniel straightened and wiped his brow. We should sell half the herd, he said, before they're too weak to fetch a good price. Beatrice shook her head stubbornly. Each cow we sell is one less calf next spring. One less chance to rebuild. If they die of thirst or starvation, there won't be any calves at all, he argued. You don't understand what this means, she said, her voice rising. These cattle are all I have left of the life I built with Thomas. If we sell them, if we fail here, she broke off, unable to continue. Daniel's expression softened. He stepped closer, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel his presence. Beatrice, he said quietly. It was the first time he'd used her given name. This isn't failing. It's surviving to fight another day. She looked up at him, at the sincerity in his eyes, and felt the last of her resistance crumble. All right, she whispered. We'll sell half. The drive to town was grueling. They pushed 30 head of cattle through dusty terrain, arriving in Silver Creek exhausted and filthy. The cattle buyer offered less than they'd hoped, but enough to see them through winter if they were careful. As they walked out of the bank, Beatrice stumbled slightly, fatigue finally overcoming her. Daniel caught her elbow to steady her. Sorry, she murmured. Just tired. You've been pushing yourself too hard, he said, concern evident in his voice. Let's get a proper meal before we head back. My treat. The restaurant was cool and dim after the blazing sun outside. Beatrice realized it was the first time she'd been in town for anything other than supplies or business since the auction. As they ate, she became aware of curious glances from other diners. People are staring, she whispered. Daniel shrugged. Let them. We're not doing anything wrong. A man and woman living on the same property. Unmarried, it gives them something to talk about. Does it bother you? What they think? Beatrice considered the question. It shouldn't. But after Thomas died, the way some people looked at me, like I was either an object of pity or opportunity. Daniel's jaw tightened. Has anyone been inappropriate with you? Nothing I couldn't handle, she assured him. His eyes held hers. You shouldn't have to handle it at all. Something changed between them after that day. Small gestures, Daniel's hand at her elbow as they crossed the street. Beatrice mending his shirt torn during fence repairs. Shared smiles over inside jokes revealed a deepening connection neither was ready to name. September brought the first hints of autumn and an unexpected visitor. Beatrice was hanging laundry when she spotted a rider approaching a woman, riding astride rather than side saddle, dressed in practical riding clothes. Hello, the woman called as she neared. You must be Mrs. Weston. Beatrice shaded her eyes. I am. And you are? Clara Bennett. I own the newspaper in Silver Creek. She dismounted gracefully. I was hoping to speak with you and Mr. Everett. What about? Beatrice asked warily. Your partnership, Clara replied. It's unusual a woman and man running a ranch together as equals. I'd like to write about it for my paper. Daniel emerged from the barn, looking equally cautious when Beatrice explained Clara's request. I don't see how our business arrangements are news, he said. Clara smiled. In a territory where women still can't vote and rarely own property, your arrangement is revolutionary. It might inspire others. Or make us targets for more gossip, Beatrice countered. People are already talking, Clara said bluntly. I'd rather print the truth than let rumors flourish. Besides, she added, her expression serious. Emmett Thornton has been buying up column inches in my paper to promote his cattle business. I'd like to demonstrate my editorial independence. Daniel and Beatrice exchanged glances. What exactly would this entail? Beatrice asked. An interview. A photograph if you're willing. I want to tell the story of how you're making this work, two strangers becoming business partners, saving a ranch that might otherwise have been absorbed by larger interests. After Clara left with her interview notes, Daniel found Beatrice by the creek, staring pensively at the water, which had begun to rise again after recent rains. Having second thoughts? He asked, sitting beside her on a flat rock. About the article? No. She picked up a pebble and tossed it into the water. About all of it. What we're doing here. The partnership? She nodded slowly. When Thomas died, I thought my life was over. Then I lost the ranch, and it felt like confirmation. But then you came along with this crazy idea. She looked at him. Why did you really do it, Daniel? The truth. He was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. I told you I've been drifting since I was 16. What I didn't tell you is why. He took a deep breath. My father was a drunk. Mean one. After my mother died, it got worse. One night, when I was 16, he came at me with a knife. I defended myself. Pushed him. He fell and hit his head on the hearth. Beatrice's eyes widened. Did he die? No. But he told everyone in town I tried to kill him. Nobody believed me when I said it was self-defense. His voice grew distant. So I left. Worked ranches across 4 states, never staying long. Always the new hand. Always the outsider. Until now, Beatrice said softly. Until now, he agreed. When I saw your ranch at auction, it wasn't just the land I wanted. It was the chance to belong somewhere. To build something that was mine. He looked at her. Ours. Impulsively, Beatrice reached for his hand. I'm glad you did. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently squeezed her hand before releasing it. We should head back, he said. Still plenty of daylight for work. Clara's article appeared the following Sunday. Partnership on the Frontier. How a widow and a cowboy are redefining ranch ownership. The accompanying photograph showed Beatrice and Daniel standing on their porch, looking determined and dignified. The response was immediate and mixed. Some neighbors wrote out to express their support. Others sent notes of disapproval about the impropriety of their living arrangement. Beatrice tried to ignore the gossip, focusing instead on preparing for winter. October brought early snow and cattle buyers from the east. Daniel and Beatrice sold 10 more head at excellent prices, securing their financial stability through spring. As they counted their earnings at the kitchen table, Daniel looked up with a grin. We did it, he said. We're going to make it. Beatrice felt a surge of pride and something deeper, something that made her heart race when Daniel smiled at her that way. We are, she agreed. The first serious blizzard hit in early November. The wind howled around the cabin as Beatrice stoked the fire, worried about Daniel out in the barn with the animals. When the door finally burst open, he stumbled in, snow-covered and half-frozen. The horses are secured, he reported through chattering teeth. But it's getting worse out there. Beatrice helped him remove his frozen coat and pushed him toward the fire. You're staying in here tonight, she insisted. You'll freeze to death in the barn. Too cold to argue. Daniel nodded gratefully. Beatrice made a pallet for him near the hearth and brought him extra blankets. As the storm raged outside, they sat before the fire drinking coffee laced with whiskey. Tell me something I don't know about you, Daniel said, color returning to his face. Beatrice smiled. Like what? Anything. A secret. A dream. She thought for a moment. I can play the piano. My mother taught me. There was a little church near our farm in Missouri with an old upright. I'd practice there for hours. I'd like to hear you play someday. Your turn, she prompted. Tell me something I don't know about you. He looked into the fire. I want children, he said quietly. A family. Never thought I would, given how I grew up. But being here, seeing what we've built. I can imagine it now. The vulnerability in his voice stirred something in Beatrice. I wanted children too, she whispered. Thomas and I tried, but... She shook her head. It wasn't meant to be. Daniel's eyes met hers across the firelit room. I'm sorry. It was a different life, she said. Sometimes I can hardly remember what it felt like, being that young bride with so many dreams. You're still young, he pointed out. Still time for dreams. The intensity of his gaze made her look away. We should get some sleep, she said, rising. The storm might break by morning. But the blizzard continued for 3 days, confining them to the cabin. They passed the time with card games, storytelling, and the comfortable silences of people who no longer needed words to communicate. On the 3rd night, as they shared the last of the whiskey, Beatrice found herself studying Daniel's profile in the firelight. "What is it?" he asked, catching her gaze. "I was just thinking how different you are from Thomas," she said. "He was always talking, planning, dreaming aloud. You're quieter, more present. Is that good or bad?" "Different," she repeated. "Not better, not worse. Just different." She hesitated. "When Thomas died, I thought I'd never feel anything again. I was wrong." Daniel set down his cup, his expression serious. "Beatrice, I need to say something, and I want you to listen before you respond." Her heart hammered in her chest. "All right. These past months with you have been the happiest of my life. I came here looking for land, for roots. I found something more valuable." He took a deep breath. "I'm in love with you. I think I have been since that auction day when you stood there so proud and broken at the same time." Beatrice couldn't speak, tears filling her eyes. "You don't have to say anything," he continued. "I know you're still grieving Thomas. I know our arrangement is complicated. I'm not asking for promises. I just wanted you to know." She reached for his hand, bringing it to her cheek. "I thought it was just me," she whispered. "I've been fighting it, feeling guilty, confused." "Don't," he said, moving closer. "Don't fight it anymore." Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, the kiss of people who had known loss and were afraid to hope. Their second was not. When the storm finally broke, they emerged into a transformed world. Everything was white and clean and new. Daniel built a snowman with Beatrice, both of them laughing like children as they rolled enormous balls of snow across the yard. "I haven't done this since I was a girl," Beatrice admitted, her cheeks flushed with cold and happiness. Daniel kissed her reddened nose. "Get used to it. I plan on making you laugh every day for as long as you'll have me." Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations and secrets. Beatrice caught Daniel disappearing into town several times, returning with mysterious packages he hid in the barn. She, in turn, worked on her gift for him when he was out checking on the cattle, a new leather vest to replace his worn one. On Christmas Eve, they decorated the cabin with pine boughs and ribbons. Daniel surprised her with a small fir tree cut from their property, which they adorned with paper ornaments and candles. "I have something for you," he said after their simple Christmas Eve dinner. He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a delicate silver locket. When Beatrice opened it, she found a tiny photograph of the two of them cut from Clara's newspaper article. "Daniel," she breathed. "It's beautiful. Open the other one," he urged, passing her a larger package. She unwrapped it to find a leather-bound book. Opening it, she gasped. It was filled with sheet music piano compositions by Mozart, Beethoven, Bach. "How did you?" "I wrote to your sister in Missouri," he admitted. "Asked what pieces you used to play. She sent these." Tears spilled down Beatrice's cheeks. "But there's no piano." Daniel's eyes twinkled. "Not yet. But Clara Bennett tells me the church in town is getting a new one after New Year's. The old one needs a home." "You didn't," she whispered. "I did. It's being delivered next week." He took her hands. "I want you to have music in your life again, Beatrice. I want you to have everything that brings you joy." She threw her arms around him, overcome. When she could speak again, she said, "Your turn," and handed him her gift. The vest fit perfectly. Daniel ran his fingers over the intricate stitching, the carefully tooled leather. "You made this?" She nodded. "I've been working on it for weeks. It's the finest gift I've ever received," he said, pulling her close. "Except for you. You're the gift I never thought I'd get, a home, a partner, a love." They celebrated the new year with cautious optimism. The winter had been harsh, but their preparations had proven adequate. The remaining cattle were healthy, the barn roof holding against the snow, the creek flowing beneath a crust of ice. In late January, Clara's newspaper featured another story about them, this one announcing their engagement. The photograph showed them standing arm in arm before their cabin, Daniel wearing his new vest, Beatrice with the silver locket gleaming at her throat. Not everyone approved. The town's more conservative elements whispered about impropriety, about Beatrice's quick transition from grieving widow to bride-to-be. But for every disapproving glance, there were two supportive ones, especially from the territory's women, who saw in Beatrice someone who had faced adversity and emerged stronger. The wedding was planned for April, when the wildflowers would carpet the hills and the harsh winter would be a memory. As February snows gave way to March's thaw, Daniel and Beatrice began expanding the cabin, adding a second bedroom and enlarging the kitchen. For the family we'll have, Daniel explained as they worked side by side laying floorboards. Beatrice smiled, but there was a shadow in her eyes. Daniel, you should know. I might not be able to give you children. Thomas and I hush, he said gently, kissing her. If children come, they'll be a blessing. If not, you're blessing enough for a lifetime. The piano arrived as promised, fitting perfectly in the corner of their expanded main room. Beatrice played every evening, her fingers gradually remembering what they had once known so well. Daniel would sit and listen, sometimes with his eyes closed, letting the music wash over him. 2 weeks before the wedding, trouble arrived in the form of Emmett Thornton. He rode up to their property one sunny afternoon, alone this time, his manner less aggressive than during his previous visit. Everett, he greeted, dismounting. Mrs. Weston. Congratulations on your engagement. Thank you, Daniel replied cautiously. What brings you out this way, Thornton? Business, the man said. I've acquired most of the water rights in the county. Yours are among the few I don't control. And we've already declined to sell, Beatrice reminded him. Thornton smiled thinly. The offer's better now. $1,000. Daniel and Beatrice exchanged glances. It was a considerable sum, enough to buy more breeding stock, expand their operations significantly. Why the sudden increase? Daniel asked. Thornton shrugged. The railroad's coming through next year. Land with guaranteed water access will be worth 5 times what it is now. Then why would we sell? Beatrice challenged. Because I can make life difficult for those who don't cooperate, Thornton said, his friendly facade dropping. Ask the Hendersons. They refused my offer last month. Now they're finding it mighty hard to get their cattle to market. Seems the trail crosses my property in several places. Daniel stepped forward. Are you threatening us, Thornton? Just stating facts. The older man remounted his horse. Think about it. $1,000 now, or potential ruin later. He tipped his hat. I'll be back for your answer next week. After he rode away, Beatrice turned to Daniel, her expression troubled. He means it. The Hendersons are barely hanging on as it is. We're not selling, Daniel said firmly. This is our land, our water, our future. Thornton doesn't get to dictate terms. But if he blocks our access to market, then we'll find another way, Daniel insisted. We've come too far to give in to bullies. The following days brought discussions with neighboring ranchers who had also resisted Thornton's offers. Together, they plotted alternative routes to market, ways to combine resources and stand against the cattle barons' pressure tactics. The night before Thornton was due to return for their answer, Daniel and Beatrice sat on their porch, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Whatever happens, Beatrice said, her head on Daniel's shoulder, we face it together. Always, he agreed. Morning brought not Thornton but Clara Bennett, riding hard up their path, her normally neat appearance disheveled. Thornton's had an accident, she announced without preamble. His horse threw him in Blackwater Canyon. He's alive but badly injured. That's terrible, Beatrice said, meaning it despite their differences with the man. Will he recover? The doctor says yes, given time. Clara dismounted, accepting the water Daniel offered. But here's the interesting part. While he's laid up, his son has taken over his affairs. I didn't know Thornton had a son, Daniel remarked. From his first marriage. The boy's been back east at school, just returned. He's calling a meeting of all the ranchers Thornton's been pressuring. Says he wants to negotiate fair water sharing agreements instead. Relief and cautious hope spread through the community in the following weeks. Young Peter Thornton proved to be nothing like his father, reasonable, fair-minded, and determined to repair relationships his father had damaged. The water rights issue was resolved through a cooperative agreement that benefited all parties. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect. Beatrice stood in her cabin, wearing her mother's lace-trimmed dress, which Clara had helped alter. Through the window, she could see guests gathering beneath the old oak tree where Thomas was buried. She had visited his grave that morning, laying wildflowers and saying a final goodbye to the life they'd shared. "I think you would like him, Thomas," she had whispered. "He's a good man. Different from you, but good in his own way." Now, as Clara helped pin flowers in her hair, Beatrice felt only peace and anticipation. "Ready?" Clara asked, adjusting the veil. Beatrice nodded. More than ready. She walked alone across the yard she had crossed thousands of times, past the barn where Daniel had lived when they first became partners, toward the oak tree where her past and future somehow met without conflict. Daniel waited for her there, handsome in a new suit, his eyes never leaving her as she approached. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows and rings before their friends and neighbors, promising to love and support each other through whatever life brought their way. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel kissed her with such tenderness that several guests wiped away tears. The celebration continued into evening, with music and dancing in the yard. As sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Daniel led Beatrice away from the crowd to a quiet spot overlooking their property. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "Completely," she answered. "Are you?" He looked out at their land, at the cabin with smoke curling from its chimney, at the healthy cattle grazing in the distance, at the creek winding its way through it all. "A year ago, I was just a drifter with some saved money and a dream. Now I have a home, a wife, a future." He turned back to her, his eyes reflecting the sunset. "I have everything." Beatrice thought about the journey that had brought them here, the auction where an auctioneer's last call had prompted a cowboy's first chance, the partnership that had become friendship and then love, the struggles they'd overcome together. "It's just the beginning," she said, reaching up to touch his face. "The best is yet to come." As they walked hand in hand back to their celebration, to the life they were building together, Beatrice knew it was true. The auction that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. In losing everything, she had found what she needed most, not just a partner, but a love strong enough to weather whatever the frontier might bring. And in the years that followed, through the birth of their children, the expansion of their ranch, the growth of Silver Creek into a proper town, Beatrice and Daniel Everett never forgot how their story began, with a last call, a first chance, and the courage to take it.